I want to leave my boyfriend after he's had a seizure. It happened so fast. 1 minute, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie. The next, his body stiffened, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed onto the floor. His arms jerked uncontrollably, his teeth clenched, and this horrible, guttural sound came from his throat. I froze. I didn't even recognize him. His whole body was shaking, thrashing like he was being electrocuted. His face turned red, then purple, then this pale shade of gray. I screamed his name, but he didn't hear me. His head banged against the floor, his legs kicked the table, knocking everything over. I panicked so hard, I couldn't even think about calling 911 at first. I just crouched there, watching the man I thought I loved turn into someone I didn't know. It felt like hours, though it was probably less than a minute. And when it finally stopped, he went completely still. Too still. I thought he was dead. And in that moment, kneeling on the floor, staring at him, I felt something I never expected. I didn't just feel scared. I felt trapped. Because the thought that slammed into my head wasn't, please be okay. It was, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can stay with him after this. I hated myself for even thinking it. But it was the truth. And just as I whispered his name again, his chest moved. He sucked in a shaky breath. His eyes fluttered open. But when he looked at me, something in his eyes felt different. And that's where everything started to change. It wasn't always like this. When I met him, he was the sweetest guy I had ever dated. We clicked instantly. Same age, same sense of humor, same taste in music. He had this goofy smile that made me laugh even when I was in the worst mood. He wasn't the loudest guy in the room, but he was warm. People gravitated toward him. We met at a friend's party, and honestly, I hadn't even planned on going that night. But he offered me a drink, we started talking, and by the end of the night, it felt like we'd known each other for years. He walked me home, and we ended up sitting on the curb outside my apartment for 2 hours, just talking about nothing and everything. Our relationship moved fast. Within 3 months, we were basically living together. Within 6, we were making plans for the future, vacations, maybe even marriage one day. I was happy, really happy. But then little things started to creep in. At first, it was being tired all the time. He'd say he just needed more sleep, or the work was draining him. Then he started getting headaches. Bad ones. He'd lie in bed with the curtains shut, groaning, sometimes snapping at me if I tried to help. I told him to see a doctor. He brushed it off, said it was just stress. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because deep down, I was scared something was wrong. And then the seizure happened. After he woke up that night, he didn't remember what had happened. He was groggy, confused, asking why I looked so freaked out. When I told him, his face went pale. He muttered no, 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 and buried his head in his hands. That reaction, like it wasn't the first time, made my stomach twist. I asked him, has this happened before? He wouldn't answer. He just shook his head, but not convincingly. Something in my gut told me he was hiding something. That night, while he finally fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind kept looping back to the same question. Could I handle this? Could I really spend my life with someone who might collapse without warning, someone who might need me to carry him through medical emergencies again and again? I hated myself for even thinking about leaving him when he was vulnerable, but I couldn't shake it. And the worst part? I didn't even know the full truth yet, because the very next day, I found something that made everything 100 times more complicated. The next morning, I woke up groggy, still replaying every second of the seizure in my head. He was still asleep beside me, breathing slow and heavy, almost like nothing had happened. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was just a bad dream. But then I noticed his bag on the floor, half open, clothes spilling out, a few papers tucked into the side pocket. Something told me to look. I know, snooping is wrong. But after last night, after watching him collapse and thrash on the floor like that, my curiosity was louder than my guilt. My hands moved before I could stop myself. Inside the bag, I found a bottle of pills. The label had his name on it, but the instructions made my chest tighten. It was for epilepsy, prescription filled 3 months ago. My stomach dropped. He knew. He already knew, and he hadn't told me. I sat there on the edge of the bed with the bottle in my hand, my mind racing. We'd been together almost a year, living together most of that time, and he had never mentioned this. Not once. When he finally stirred awake, I hid the bottle behind me. He rubbed his eyes, groaned, and asked what time it was. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Why didn't you tell me? I blurted out. He froze. His hand stopped mid-rub, and his whole face changed. Tell you what, he said carefully. I pulled out the pill bottle and set it on the bed between us. His eyes darted to it, then back to me. For a long second, he didn't say anything. Then he sighed, grabbed the bottle, and muttered, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I felt my blood boil. You had a seizure in front of me last night. You could have died. How is this not a big deal? He ran his hand through his hair, looking cornered. I didn't want you to freak out. People hear epilepsy and think I'm broken. I didn't want you to see me differently. I stared at him, my mouth dry. But the thing is, I did see him differently now. I couldn't help it. I wanted to be compassionate. I wanted to be understanding. But all I could think was, what if it happens again? What if it happens when I'm not home? What if I can't handle this for the rest of my life? I hated myself for thinking it, but the thought was there, sitting heavy in my chest. Maybe I didn't want this relationship anymore. The rest of that day was tense. He tried to act normal, making breakfast, cracking little jokes, but it all felt forced. I couldn't stop staring at him, wondering how many times this had happened before. I asked if his family knew. He said yes. I asked how long he'd had it. He said since he was a kid. He told me he was usually good with his medication, but sometimes he forgot, and that's what probably triggered last night's seizure. Forgot. The word made me want to scream. How could he forget something like that? Still, part of me softened when he admitted, I was scared you'd leave me if you knew. That's why I didn't say anything. And the worst part? He was right. because even as he sat there vulnerable, open, finally being honest, I was already thinking about the door. That evening, after he went to bed, I sat alone on the couch. My phone buzzed with texts from friends, asking if I wanted to come out that weekend. Normally, I would have said no, but this time, I stared at the screen and thought maybe I should go. Maybe I needed to clear my head. So I texted back, yeah, I'll come. Little did I know, that decision would set off a chain of events that made everything 10 times harder. Because what happened that weekend changed everything. That Saturday, I put on makeup, dressed up a little, and told him I was heading out with friends. He gave me this soft smile and said, have fun. Text me if you need me. The guilt hit me like a wave. He was trying. After everything, he was trying to be normal, supportive. But the truth was, I didn't feel the same anymore. I needed space. The second I stepped into the bar with my friends, it was like I could breathe again. The music was loud, the lights were dim, and for a few hours I got to forget about seizures and medications and secret pill bottles. I laughed. I danced. I felt free. But the freedom came with its own kind of shame. Every time I checked my phone and saw no new messages from him, I felt relief instead of worry. And that relief scared me. Around midnight, one of my friends, Emily, pulled me aside. She knew me too well. You've been weird all night, she said. What's going on? I hesitated. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not about the seizure, not about the pills, not about the way my feelings had shifted overnight. But the words tumbled out before I could stop them. My boyfriend had a seizure, I whispered. Like a real one. And I don't know if I can stay with him after this. Emily's eyes widened. Oh my God, is he okay? He's fine now, I said quickly. But he has epilepsy. He didn't tell me. I found his meds. He's known for years, Em. And he hid it from me. She squeezed my hand. That's a lot. I nodded, feeling tears sting my eyes. I feel horrible, but all I can think about is leaving him. Like I can't handle this. Emily didn't judge me. She just hugged me. But in her silence, I heard something louder than words. If I wanted out, no one was going to stop me. The next morning, I stumbled home with a headache, kicking off my heels the second I walked in. He was in the kitchen making coffee, humming to himself. For a moment, the guilt came roaring back. He didn't deserve this version of me. Cold, distant, already halfway gone. He handed me a mug and said, how was your night? I forced a smile. Fun. But he studied my face, his eyes narrowing slightly. You sure? Yeah, I lied. And that's when I realized. He could feel it. He could tell something between us had shifted. The week that followed was strange. We went through the motions, but there was a heaviness in the air. He tried harder than ever, cooking dinners, planning movie nights, even surprising me with flowers. But instead of feeling loved, I felt suffocated. Every nice thing he'd just made me feel more trapped. More like I was playing a part one didn't want anymore. One night, I even caught myself Googling how to break up with someone who's sick. The guilt of even typing those words made me slam the laptop shut. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before I said them out loud. And then it happened again. Another seizure. This time, not at home. This time, in public. And that changed everything. It was supposed to be a normal night. We'd gone out to dinner at a little Italian place near our apartment. I remember the garlic bread had just come to the table, and I was scrolling through the menu when I heard his fork clatter against the plate. I looked up, and my blood turned to ice. His whole body went stiff. His chair tipped slightly as his arms jerked, his face twisting in a way that made the couple at the next table gasp. And then, before I could move, he was on the ground, convulsing in the middle of the restaurant. People jumped up. Someone shouted a call, 911. A waiter rushed over with wide eyes. And me? I froze. Again, I just sat there, staring at him, the man I'd been sharing a bed with for nearly a year, shaking violently on the floor while strangers gathered around. My chest squeezed so tight I couldn't breathe. But the thought that pushed through the panic was the same one as before. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. By the time the seizure passed, he was limp, breathing shallow, and everyone was looking at me like do something. I knelt beside him, forcing myself to hold his hand, whispering, it's okay, even though inside, I felt like I was miles away. The paramedics came. They lifted him onto a stretcher. I followed them numbly to the ambulance, climbed inside, and sat in the corner as the siren wailed. But while they worked on him, checking his vitals, asking questions, my mind wasn't with him. My mind was on me. How much longer could I keep living like this? At the hospital, they kept him overnight for observation. A doctor explained his condition in detail, triggers, risks, the importance of strict medication schedules. I nodded politely, thanked him, pretended like I was absorbing it. But inside, the words blurred together. All I heard was responsibility. All I felt was dread. He woke up a few hours later, groggy but smiling when he saw me. You stayed, he said softly, like he hadn't expected me to. And in that moment, the guilt nearly crushed me. Because yes, I stayed. But not because I wanted to. I stayed because I didn't know how to leave. The next day, they discharged him. We took a cab home in silence. He leaned against me, exhausted, and I let him. But the whole time, my stomach twisted because I didn't want his weight on me anymore. When we got back to the apartment, he collapsed in a bed and was out within minutes. I stood in the kitchen, staring at him from the doorway. I should have felt protective. I should have felt love. Instead, I felt like I was drowning. And for the first time, I started imagining what it would look like if I packed my things and just left. But before I could act on that thought, something happened later that night that I didn't see coming. Something that made leaving feel 10 times harder. Because when I walked back into the bedroom, I found him awake, sitting up, holding his phone. And the look on his face told me he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. He was sitting up in bed, the glow of his phone lighting up his face. His eyes weren't groggy anymore. They were sharp, hurt, almost accusing. I froze in the doorway. What's wrong? He didn't answer right away. He just held up the phone. My stomach flipped when I saw what was on the screen. It was my search history. How to break up with someone who's sick. My heart stopped. He looked at me with this mix of disbelief and betrayal, like I just stabbed him in the chest. "This is what you've been thinking," he whispered. His voice cracked. All this time, I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My brain scrambled for excuses, explanations, anything. But the silence between us was louder than words. Finally, I said the only thing I could. "I'm sorry." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Sorry? That's all. I didn't mean for you to see that," I whispered. "So you meant it," he snapped. I wanted to deny it, but the truth hung heavy in the room. I didn't mean it. Maybe not every second of every day, but the thought had been there, festering, and now it was out in the open, raw and undeniable. He set the phone down, ran his hands through his hair, and said quietly, "I trusted you. I thought you were the one person who wouldn't see me as less." His words sliced through me, but instead of pulling me closer, they pushed me further away. Because hearing him say that, hearing the weight of his need, it only made me want to run faster. The next few days were torture. The air in the apartment was thick, like a storm cloud that wouldn't move. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was clipped sharp. I tried to act normal, making dinner, folding laundry, but it all felt fake. Every time I looked at him, I saw that moment burned into my memory. Him holding up the phone, asking if I really meant it. And I didn't have an answer that would make it better. Because deep down, I already knew what I wanted. I wanted out. One night, while he was in the shower, I started packing a bag. Just a few essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop. My hand was shaking the whole time, but the idea of leaving felt like the only way I could breathe again. I zipped the bag quietly, set it by the door, and sat on the couch waiting for the right moment. But before I could move, before I could make that choice, he stepped out of the bathroom, dripping water, a towel slung around his shoulders. He saw the bag instantly. His face hardened. "So that's it? You're really leaving?" I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. I can't do this anymore." For a second, I thought he'd yell, or beg, or break down. But instead, he just stood there, silent, his eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, he said something I'll never forget. "You think you're the one leaving?" His voice was low, almost chilling. "You don't know half of it yet." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. He just walked past me, into the bedroom, and shut the door. I sat there, frozen, staring at the closed door, my bag by my feet, my whole body trembling. And for the first time, I realized maybe I wasn't the only one hiding something. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying his words in my head, over and over. "You don't know half of it yet." What did that mean? Was he hiding something worse than the seizures? Another secret buried deeper than the medication bottles? Every creak in the apartment made me jump. Every shadow felt heavy. And when I finally worked up the nerve to peek into the bedroom, his side of the bed was empty, but the closet door was wide open, and something inside was missing.